We're now going to look at some improvement options for a reagent kit factory. The product's in the form of a kit comprising fluids in different bottles. There are two bottles which are generic or diluent type common product, and there's a specialist bottle which contains the particular reagent that this kit applies to. Now, the whole thing goes into a box. A pile of boxes are then put on a pallet, and that's how it's shipped. So let's look at the process flow here. We've got two parallel flows underneath the generic, which is made in large bulk and stored as bottled bulk, whereas the specialist reagent component A is made every time there's a batch. So that goes from formulation through testing of the bulk solution, bottling of it, then this bottle is combined with the stocked bottle generics, goes into the kit, which is tested as a kit, and then it's assembled into a box and put on pallets before shipping. So now let's look at the operations model view of this factory. We've got a product that's made at the volume of 80,000 items a year. Each one costs about $3. We've got quite a high response time of 66 days, and we have capacity utilization of 18%, which is not a problem at all. One other observation you could make from the numbers here is you see that the total cost is $245,000 and the total material inventory is about $46,000. The ratio of those two numbers, which is between 5 and 6 to 1, is the inventory turns for this operation. So we want to do something about response time. First place we usually go is to do something with batch size. So let's look at the batch size for the specific component A, which is linked, as you can see there, with the downstream processes, apart from the generic. So let's change that batch size from 4,500 to 3,900. Quite a modest reduction, and that will have reduced the batch sizes of the bottling of that component, the testing of the kit, and the assembly of the kit. As we can see on the output sheet, we've reduced the response time by 8 days, which is great, but we've got the cost and inventory penalty, which we don't like the look of. So let's do something about those. If we look at the cost sheet, we're going to play with the formulation A material value added, which is the chemicals that are getting mixed to make that reagent. And to look at that in detail, we're going to look at the tab called Variance, which is driving that number. That 30-cent figure you can see at the bottom right. That's a weighted average of the chemical cost for the three different types of reagents. The cheapest of those is actually code AA, but that's also the largest volume, and that's the one that we find is most amenable to reduction. So suppose we were able to buy those chemicals for less. So I'm going to put that in for somewhere near 11 cents. As you can see, the weighted average comes down to 25 cents, and if we look at the output sheet, we're now pretty much cost neutral. We've saved a bit of inventory, and we've still got the response time improvement that we were looking for. So that is an improvement of some sort. Let's reset those changes and we'll try a different approach. That's going back to 4,500, and that's going back to 20 cents. Just check that that re-zeroed. Now we're going to do an example that considers a product rearrangement slide. You remember that this kit has two generic bottles for every specialist reagent. Suppose it's been discovered that customers actually don't use the second bottle, or very rarely do. So someone's asking, well, what would it save if we just had one bottle in there? So to do that in here, we would go into the Process tab and change this quantity per sale figure from 2 to 1. We're now telling the model to just put one bottle in the kit. We're still going to make it at the same batch size though. So if we do that, we end up with a cost saving of $24,000 or 30 cents, which is around 10% of the total, and obviously there's a bit of inventory saved as well. There's also a slight reduction in the utilization of the formulations area. So you might say, is the risk with the market worth it? You've got the numbers to have the discussions now. For your information, these two examples are scenarios 28 and 29 from our book Bridge of Faith for Operations.